Hello and welcome to this session in which we would look at the overall audit strategy as part of the planning phase. At this point in our audit planning, we looked at the business, we understand the business itself, we understand the industry in which the business operates, and we understand the motive of the client. At this point, we are ready to plan the initial audit strategy. Now, this strategy will be discussed later on in details. In this session, I'm just going to go over an overview. The strategy would outline the scope of the audit. What are we going to audit? For example, the financial statements. The timing. When are we going to audit those financial statements? Is it throughout the year? At the end of the year? Are we going to do some throughout the year? Some at the end of the year? Many factors will play a role into this. Also, regulatory deadlines. Sometimes we have to finish the audit before a certain amount of time. If it's a private company, sometimes we might need to finish the audit for the shareholders, for the meetings of the shareholders. Some business are seasonable, so we have to take that into account. Also, the direction of the audit, how are we going to perform the audit? So at this point, the strategy would outline those three, which again, in this session, we will not discuss because those are the blueprint for crafting the audit plan. We will discuss in a separate recording. This is just the overall picture as part of planning. Also, as part of planning, we will factor other elements such as how many client sites does this client have, because we have to budget for that. Also, we have to look at the historical effectiveness of their internal control. Why? Because that's going to help us and determine how much are we going to do, the direction of the audit, the net, which is called the nature, timing, and extent. How much are we going to do? Timing is when are we going to do it, but how much of that work? Well, whether we are going to rely on their internal control or not will help us make that determination. Also, this planned strategy, which is planning the overall audit, will help us determine the necessary resources. And here, what we mean by resources, people, staff, including specialists for the engagement if needed. Why if needed? We may or may not need a specialist. We'll talk about specialists as well in this session. Let's go ahead and before we proceed any further, I have a public announcement about my company, FarhatLectures.com. Farhat Accounting Lectures is a supplemental educational tool that's going to help you with your CPA exam preparation as well as your accounting courses. My CPA material is aligned with your CPA review course such as Becker, Roger, Wiley, Gleam, Miles. My accounting courses are aligned with your accounting courses broken down by chapter and topics. My resources consist of lectures, multiple choice questions, true-false questions, as well as exercises. Go ahead, start your free trial today. Dive a little bit more into the details. For staffing requirement, well, in accordance with the auditing standard, and to make sure we are conducting an efficient audit, we must designate people who are proficient, knowledgeable, experienced, suitable personnel for the engagement. So you have to assign staff with necessary expertise, either with this client or the industry overall. Now, if you have a large audit, you might involve partners, more than one partners, staff, and various level of people from multiple offices. Or sometimes you might have to involve international offices if you have a global client. Now, specialists in areas like statistical sampling, business valuation, and IT may also join the team depending on the nature of the audit. Now, smaller audit, and I used to do smaller audit, may require just one or two staff members. And I used to audit a whole nonprofit by myself from A to Z. Sometimes I would audit a condominium with two other individuals. So depending on the size of the audit engagement, and sometimes, which is I never audited publicly traded company, you need a large team. Staff requirement, you want to maintain the continuity of staff across the years. Why? And I'm going to tell you this from a first-hand experience, and this should make sense to you as well. When you audit a company the first year, you are basically learning. You're just figuring things around. You might be effective, but you might not be efficient. It means you might get the work done. It may take a little bit longer. Year 2, you're going to become more effective and more efficient. And year 3, you're becoming more effective and efficient. So this ensures that the CPA firm and its staff remain versed in technical demands for that client, and this fosters stronger relationship with client staff. Now, you don't want to foster too much relationship. Remember, conflict of interest. You don't want to be too friendly with the client, but from the audit staff perspective, you want them to be more efficient. And what happened over the years, inexperienced staff assistant can often become the most seasoned non-partner on the engagement within few years. You put someone few years on that audit, they will become expert. And this is where you get your promotion. So what I want to tell you is this. If you get assigned to an engagement, even though you may not like it, embrace it. Why? Because the more you learn, the more your firm would rely on you. That's one. Two, even if your firm don't appreciate your work, the more you learn, the more experience and expertise you have that you're going to take away. You're going to help yourself grow professionally, which will make you more in demand in the market. So when you work, yes, you are working for a CPA firm, but work for yourself in a sense to grow your professional experience. So take the work as this is your own work. Don't act as an employee when you are conducting an audit. Act like an entrepreneur. You're learning. And you are learning and you are helping, of course, the firm, but you are also everything that you are doing, you are learning. For a computer manufacturing client with high inventory risk, you want to have an auditor who understands inventory and the industry. So you want to give people, specialized people, have specialized people, experienced people, the right people at the right engagement. If a firm lacks qualified expert for assessing inventory obsolescence, well, they can consider hiring a specialist. So what is a specialist? A need for a specialist. Specialist is someone who has a specialized knowledge in a specific area, whatever that area is, and we may not have as an audit firm. For example, you might need an engineer, a civil engineer, if you're auditing a construction company, if they're building, many units, buildings, whatever, and you need to know how far are they into the process, you might want to hire an engineer, and that engineer can evaluate better than an accountant. Are they 20% done, 30% done, so on and so forth. So auditing standard outline criteria for selecting and reviewing a specialist. And we're going to have a separate recording for the use of a specialist. This is just introducing this concept here as part of the planning. The specialist can come in many forms. They could either be, they work for the client full-time, they can be an or independent consultant or independent parties. So it doesn't have to be a person within the firm, just a specialist could be an outside person. An example would include diamond expert. So if you are auditing a company and you want someone to basically test, make sure this diamond is the real thing, you want to bring an expert. Actuaries for evaluating insurance loss reserves. So if you are auditing an insurance company and you don't understand the insurance business, you want to set their loss reserve, like bad debt, well, you have to bring an actuary that understands this business, lawyers for legal contract, business valuation expert for fair value accounting. Well, if you need to report something at fair value, you will need to bring a valuation expert. The auditor must understand the client business well enough to determine if a specialist is needed. If it's needed, and we'll talk about the work of a specialist, the auditor should assess the qualification of that specialist, understand the work, goals, and scope, and consider relationship with the client. Especially, this specialist must be independent to be objective. Now, once you use a specialist, it doesn't change your responsibility as an auditor, because if you hire the specialist, anything that specialist does or do, you are responsible for that. Using a specialist does not change the auditor's responsibility, and the audit report should only mention them if the report leads to a modification of the audit opinion. So you don't mention them if there is no need to. Again, use of a specialist will be covered in a separate recording. What should you do now? Go to Farhat lectures, look at MCQs to understand audit planning better. We're practically done with audit planning. Now we're going to be moving on to more detailed information about the audit, more detailed steps, whether you are a CPA exam candidate or an accounting student. Good luck, study hard, and of course, stay safe.